Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Good
So,
evening.
Nice to see you all. We have a couple more joining as we speak here. I'll keep an eye out on the waiting room. All right. I know some of you guys are spread across the US, Canada, and even France. So this is great. It's amazing what technology can do. And Tracy is here. I think you all will recognize her. I'm sure you've had many email interactions with Tracy. Tracy, is there anything you'd like to share as we get started today? Or will you be just kind of available in case the questions come up for registration, things like that?
Sure. Hello. I don't have anything really to say right now, but it's nice to be here. So yes, I'll be available. Are there any questions?
All right. Well, great. I will keep an eye on that waiting room, but we'll go ahead and get started here. So this session is really an interactive time for you guys to get answers to your questions. I'll go over some basics that will help anyone know some of the information that might be hard to grasp at first as you read over everything all at once here at the beginning of the program. And as I look around the room here, the Zoom room, it looks like most of you all are fairly new to the program. I don't see too many who are veterans, past several courses. I think most of you all are working in your first or second course, I believe. So that's really the main goal, is to give you some tips to allow you to enjoy it more and to clear up any confusion you're having. So here, this goes for the whole session. If you have a question about anything we're talking about, you are welcome to interrupt me at any time. Even if I'm going through some information, kind of presenting some things, feel free to butt in, to unmute yourself and just speak. You can also drop messages in the chat. So you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom window the option to add to the chat for everyone. So even right now, if there's a topic that you know already, I'm hoping I get this answered today. You can go ahead and write that in the chat, and I'll be making sure I get to those as we go along. So let me share my screen, and I'll show you sort of the starting point for the topics we'll cover today. I'm showing you my desktop with all the different windows I imagine you'll have open as you work on schoolwork. So this is the orientation checklist. And just so you all know, I'm on a Mac computer, but all this should work just fine on a PC and pretty similarly as well. So this is an orientation checklist. You'll notice the very first thing is Moodle that's listed here. So there's a few things that are assumed before you even get to the orientation checklist, and that is one, that you've applied to the seminary, you've been accepted, and I know that is all of you. So you get your acceptance letter, Tracy sets up your accounts, and you get this information about what to do with all these different accounts you have and how to get started with the program. So we start with Moodle because that's the learning management system. So there's a link directly to a video here that talks about the workflow that you will typically experience in a course. So I won't spend too much time on that today, but we will cover that in the course of the topics we'll go through. So Moodle is where we'll start. Then we'll talk about Logos software. And here, one of the main things I want to highlight is some of the differences with the new Logos Max that everyone has been upgraded to. I know some of you may have been already on a Logos subscription, but there are some substantial differences with Logos Max compared to the Logos 9 features that our custom library had in the past. So I'll highlight some of those and show you some basics in Logos, some tips that might help you. And then we won't spend time watching the basic training videos. As I said, I'll go over some basics. We'll talk briefly about Zotero and Firefox for citation management. Firefox is the recommended web browser, but you can also do this with Chrome, so it'll apply to any other browser you're using as well. Then we'll talk about the program journal. We'll talk about the reading your first book and some of the tools in Logos for that. And then these are the other steps I think many of you are already past. So we'll try to make this applicable to the majority of you. Some of you are already well into these steps, but we'll talk about some of the details that might help smooth things out as far as your learning experience as well. So as I said, please drop into the chat and post a question if you have a specific topic that you'd like to delve more into. But we will get started with Moodle here now. So I'm going to go to my Chrome browser to show you Moodle. And this is approximately what it should look like for you when you log in. Although This one has all of the courses listed, whereas you'll probably just see one at a time, and it'll build out the different courses that you have available. So the first course we start the program with is SF 511, Spiritual Formation for Ministry Leaders. So I can click on that course here, and this is where we all begin, the Start Here button. It's kind of easy to miss, but this is where you'll find that video on the course workflow. There's a link back to the orientation and support guide, but this is where this information is given to you right at the beginning of your first course, explaining things like follow Moodle instructions and not what you see in the mobile ed explore section, things like that, just to make sure you get the right perspective on how to go through the coursework. So that's the place to begin. I want to point out with Moodle something that has come up with several students. I imagine some of you already have this down, but it is very critical, and it has led to a lot of people having a difficult time getting started. So one of the keys with Moodle is to pop out the menus on the left and on the right side. You don't see a right side menu available right now because we're not in a lesson. We're only on the Start Here section. But you have to pop these out to really get your bearings in Moodle. So if you look here on the left, it gives you a lineup of all the different units. There's 7 units in every course. And then it also has all the 5 lessons within those units. So let's imagine you've already completed 1 unit and now working on unit 2. Let's click on Life Story, lesson 6. And you come to the first screen for lesson 6, which looks like this. You'll always start with a screen with this question at the bottom. It gives you a summary of the lesson, but then at the bottom, you need to click a choice here. So either it says, do you want to start at the last page you saw? So it'll remember your history. It'll take you to the last page you saw. You can choose that, or you can just select no, which takes you here. And the right side menu is extremely important because it shows you all the steps in the lesson. So I recommend, just making sure you're popping out both of these menus. It'll help you get an overview of what's contained in there, because you really need to go through each step sequentially in order to complete a lesson and complete readings and videos and research assignments before you respond in your course portfolio, which we'll talk about in a minute. But was that new for anyone in this group? Have you all seen that before? I hope you've all seen it, because I have had people get really confused as they're just looking at the one main screen in the middle and they're not sure where they are in the lesson, and they can miss some of the steps involved. So that's really important. That's Moodle. And one of the things that Moodle does is it has links into Logos. So the only way we're using Moodle at this point is just the step-by-step course instructions. That's where you go to figure out, okay, what am I doing? What are the videos and readings that inform my responses in my portfolio? So it has a link like this. Here's a trick that I'll show you that can, it may not be that necessary now, but down the road, Logos is retiring their direct links. So it won't be possible to have a link that takes you directly from a program like Moodle straight into Logos. It has to first connect through the web app now. So it has to have an internet connection to launch you to that location in Logos Bible software. So if you click this, it'll normally now take you right into your segment in Logos, as you can see here. That was a link to segment 21 of the courseware textbook. But if you run into something that launches the web app, then a way to stop that happening is actually you can copy and paste this link right here. Make sure you take the URL, not just the surface text, but the link address. So you copy that to your clipboard, and then you can go over here into Logos. And if it's a link in that format, a URL link, you don't have to use the web app. You can actually just copy and paste it right here into that Go box, and it'll just bring it up directly. So this is affecting people like in the later courses where there's a Google document with links for Logos readings. It just simplifies the process without having to launch the web app before opening that location in your desktop app. So a lot of people don't know you can just paste URLs into this box up here, but now you all are ahead of the game. So you can, any link you have to a Logos reading, you can just paste it in there. That might save you some time. Okay, so that's what it looks like to go from your Moodle instructions into Logos. And Logos is going to be the location where you spend most of your time, because that's where your videos and your textbook readings and research activities will be found. So you can see here, step 2, is a research activity. When you see these, you'll see screenshots. This is where the updates to Logos Max are going to take us some time to grab new screenshots that will match exactly what you see in your logo software compared to the course instructions. And that's a very large project. We're going to do it in conjunction with moving out of Moodle and into Populi. So it's going to be one of those construction zone type of phases, where there's a lot of work going on, and not everything is cleaned up and beautiful in a short amount of time, but the end result is going to be much better because Populi has a far simpler approach to different pages and steps and lessons. And in that process, we'll update these screenshots. And it's going to be a little bit less detailed sometimes. You'll have things like, here's your research activity. Use your fact book in Logos to explore this topic. And then any resources you have on your own, it will pull from that. There's going to be more general research assignments to really answer a research question. And just the basic instructions will be there for you as far as how to use different Logos tools to do that. So this will be updated. Just be aware and keep an eye out for things like that. The fact book hasn't changed a whole lot in Logos Max, but there will be some differences. Always look for just the main point of the activity. Read over what you're doing, the main guide or tool you're using in Logos, and you can also skip ahead to what the output is going to be in your course portfolio. I recommend this because it helps to know what the questions are that you'll be answering before you do the readings and videos, so that you don't get to the questions later and realize, oh, I should have been paying attention to this particular issue as I was reading through this material. If you don't do that, then you might find yourself rereading a lot of things. That can be discouraging because it takes more time. Whereas if you're aware of it ahead of time, you can make note. You can already go over to your portfolio, start filling in some notes about how you will respond when the time comes. So that's a little bit on Moodle. Any questions so far on the Moodle piece of the course workflow? Everyone feels like that's thumbs up, old hat. You guys are good on that? Okay, again, I think one of the main things is being able to copy and paste those links out, and also opening up those two menus on the sides to really find out where you are in the course instructions. So, okay, let's go back and I'll share my screen again and explore some of the changes in logo software that have come with Max. I think everyone has their Max license claimed now, so you should have seen an automatic update to that. Before we start going through this, I'm going to stretch this window out a little bit to fill my screen. And if you notice, the text on my screen I have like a 30-inch screen here, but the text is pretty large. So one of the things you can do is just go to Logos Preferences. This is what I did. And in the program settings, you'll see these options for things like the program scaling. And you can see I've scaled the content to 140%, and the program scaling is also scaled up. And I did that so I can show you more easily on the screen share here. But you can change that whenever you want. If you want to make your layout just larger text, that's a place you can adjust that. There's a lot more settings in this area that you'll want to go through and just set in a way that suits you. I've got the Turabian 9th edition citation style in here. That's not super critical, because if you're using Zotero, then you can just use that tool for citations. But if you want to set it in Logos, that one or SBL 2nd edition are the two we recommend, just because those are the most common with biblical studies citations. So there's your program settings. I'll leave it to you to explore that more on your own. But here's an example of what your layout might look like. Okay, so here in the middle, we have a search tab, and there's a really nice update that they just added in version 40. So this automatic update was pushed out that enhanced the search capabilities for Bible searches. And I just discovered this recently. I thought I'd show you. So now you can just type in your question for you're on the Bible tab, and you choose your version of the Bible, and then it's on Smart Search instead of Precise. So you choose Smart Search for your Bible search. You can type in a question like this one is, what is the verse that talks about the peace of God guarding your heart? You know how when you're thinking of a passage, you can't quite get it. A lot of times you might go to Google to get this, but then you're going to get a lot of other stuff besides the Bible. Sometimes that works, but in Logos, you can now use it this way, whereas this didn't used to be possible. So I just typed in that question, and the AI enabled search took me right to my top hits. So it not only gave me Philippians 4:7, which was the one I was thinking of and trying to remember, it gave me these other passages that also apply to that question, which I did not have in my mind. So that was a really nice result. And being able to start with a simple question like that is one of the nicest things about this new era of Logos that we're in. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Our big thing we very much agree with Logos on is that Logos, with this curated set of books that have been vetted, is a much more reliable research partner than Google, which is filtered and has a lot of things that you may not really agree with that are being sifted into your mix of results there. So it's simply choosing from only the Bible, a version that you prefer, or your books, for example. You can do a search of your books only with smart features like that, or you can use everything in their catalog, in which case you're going to get some results that you'd have to purchase to really use in depth. You'll get like a summary, but then books available for purchase. So the main ones I use are Bible, search, and books. Use the library that I've already selected and stick with that. But the AI features in those parameters are really, really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to close the search feature. Now I have my courseware textbook for LD 102, which is the core content of our SF 511 course. And here you'll notice that when you click play, it actually launches the other resource in your library, which is the video resource itself. You can go and play this in Logos. You can also take it, you can actually go to faithlife.tv or faithlife TV. Let me show you what that looks like. faithlifetv.com is a little known alternative to watching the videos. I'm apparently not signed in here, but there is some free content. But here, if you sign in with the same Logos account that you have, just that same login that you use for logos.com or in your app, if you sign in there, you'll actually be able to access your mobile ed videos in this app. And if you're a Mac user, you don't have speed control options in Logos, but you can do that in the Faithlife TV setting. So that's an option for you that we haven't talked about a lot, but some people like this because they can put it on their big screen TV more easily, or they just like the player format that it has. It's a little bit faster sometimes to get the video going if you go there. So that's an option for you as well, sort of an advanced, unnecessary, but still perhaps helpful option for you to view your mobile ed videos.
If you have Apple TV and probably some of the other streaming devices, the Faithlight TV is available as well.
As
So you don't even have to worry about trying to push it from your computer to your television. You could actually just download the Faithlife TV app.
Great. Yeah, that's an app you can download from an app store. You just sign in with the same credentials, and then you can browse through there. And it probably is easier to navigate in the app format than these other ones. Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know I've heard from some students, especially a husband and wife, who like to watch the videos together, that they put the app on their TV, and that's how they viewed that content at the same time without their computer at that time. So again, I would recommend, having the portfolio questions in mind as you watch the videos. You can take down some notes about the particular things that apply to the topic, or you can always go back in later and you can search that video transcript. One of the best things about having these Logos Mobile Ed courses is that you can just go right up here to the resource itself and click the search for that specific resource. And let's see, like the term maturity. Let's say you're looking for a key term and you're wondering, where he talks about that topic. You can just search the term right there. It shows you there's 46 hits. So in this course, in the videos, he mentions maturity 46 times. You click these buttons right here to simply scroll through them, and it shows you the location where you can find those. And it even has a fuzzy search, so it's not just limited to the exact match, but it'll take you to everywhere that that topic appears. So that's an advantage of having the courseware textbook version in Logos, is the transcript is searchable. It's copy and pastable. You can highlight, and then you can add a note or take that as a clipping using the clippings tool. All those resources are available for you right there. So imagine, if there was no transcript of the video and they're saying some really great things, these lecturers, and you're trying to write down all the insights that they say in the videos. That's what my seminary experience was like, trying to basically transcribe live while I'm listening to these lectures. And the fact that it's already written down can save you so much time and allow you to use your thinking and reflective abilities just to focus on the value, the applicability of what's being said, not just the sheer content of what's being said in the video. That's all recorded and searchable for you in Logo. So I love that. I hope that's a great advantage to you all. All right, that's a little bit on the video content. I'm going to switch over to a book now, and this is the Surviving and Thriving in Seminary book. Here's the menu that pops out to the side. I closed it, but there's several options here. This is the part that's really a lot different in Logos Max. This is called the dynamic toolbar. Everything is moved around. I do think it's better, but it is a lot different as far as how to find certain things. For example, the visual filters feature, there's no longer even the icon that looks like that. I'll show you how to get to that information in a moment. This information over here used to be within the 3 dots area of the menu, but that's shifted around. So let's show you how to find certain things in this. So the first thing you can see is there is the contents menu out there to the side. So that'll help you navigate the book. You can expand these to see the different sections and content, collapse them. That's not really too much different. The dynamic toolbar is really this section up here. So you still have the search option. You've got a notes tab. You can show notes and highlights. This is just a simple toggle on and off. It can allow you to open the notes tool if you like. You can play around with that. But this is where some of the major differences are. Formatting. This is where you choose whether you want to show factbook tags. Now, this tripped somebody up recently because when they double clicked words in a book, they would automatically launch them to the factbook, or it might have been single click actually. So if you turn this off, then that means it'll revert to just having the regular text in here where you can click it, hover over it like this, and see the options. If you turn on in formatting, factbook tags, if you turn it on, then wherever a word is mentioned that appears as an entry in the factbook, it'll turn that into a hyperlink to where when you click it, it'll launch that factbook entry. And that's what the student I talked to he didn't know that existed, and he wanted to turn it off. This is the way to do it. So it's going to be more common when you're in a Bible. It'll do that wherever there's a person's name, for example, because there's a factbook entry for that person. This resource, which is Surviving and Thriving in Seminary, doesn't have a lot of those. It's not tagged in that way. So you won't see it too much here. But that's an important thing to be aware. That's new. You can turn it off if you don't want that result of clicking a word that's tagged in the factbook to launch you over to the factbook. You can just turn that off right here. So I'll turn it off for now. Gives you some more options there. The markers are also important. You can turn it on or off. There's a toggle for the whole thing, or you can select certain things. So I like to turn on page numbers personally. It's an option, but when you turn it on, it tells you what page of that print book, the print equivalent page number, it tells you what you're on as you scroll through the resource. And I like that because it gives me a sense of, the equivalency to like the print edition. Helps me keep my bearings in the book and see how much progress I'm making. Also gives me a reference point for what page something was on. So I choose to put that one on. But you may have a different preference. You might just have, you might like to see the text all cleaner at that point. So that's an option for you. The page numbers are found there if you want those to show up. Even if you turn them off, you'll still see page number in the location bar up here. So you can go up there and see it, but if you want to see it in text, this is where you do that. Emphasize is the other thing that used to be called visual filters. Most of what was in visual filters is now under emphasize. So again, there's a toggle for the whole thing. You can just turn all that off if you want to see nothing highlighted or underlined. And this is where you can start expanding and selecting your options. I'm not a big fan of popular highlights. I don't want to see what every other user, tended to highlight in the book. So I'll turn that off and just see it fresh. You can select some other options right here. It tells you whether you want this to be a hover or click action. Those are options there for you. And this book is not tagged with all of the original language information that you'll see in a Bible. So let's look at a Bible real quick. I'm going to just open the ESV from my shortcuts menu over here. And this is where a lot of those visual filters, you can see it's a lot more complex up here. So we can say, do we want to see interlinear? Yes or no? Checks that on or off. This has a dedicated interlinear option that you can just control the whole thing very quickly instead of choosing all the specific information and what you want to include. So that's within the view menu. Formatting, you can see there's a lot more here as well. Reformat, all these things are very full. The markers area is where you can see different tags like addressees and speakers being tagged. Turn that on or off like that. So paged view will break it up into separate pages. Locator bar, it gives you just about all the control you can imagine, but this is where you'll find that. Tools also has a lot. As far as reading plans, you can read any passage aloud pretty much. You can summarize any passage of a book you're in. And then the share option is where you'll copy a link to it. So if you were making a notes document and you want to save that particular location to a, I want to save this location to a link in a separate spot, like out of Logos, then you could just copy the link and then paste it back in to the Go box to take you right back to that. That'd be one way to use that feature. So those are dynamic toolbar features. The other one that's really important is something that I mentioned in some of the training videos is how to get the citation information for this book out of Logos and into Zotero, for example. And to do that, you would go back to the Home tab in the toolbar. You can see that this info button disappears when I'm on formatting. So you have to go back to Home. And instead of clicking up here where the three dots used to contain this information, there's now this info option. And this is where you find the book information. You can add your tags right here. Like if you want to tag it for background studies and then make a collection based on that tag, you can do that. But here is where you select RIS style. And this is the part that you can use this to copy it to your clipboard, then go over to Zotero, and you could import it right here by clicking import from clipboard. And now it's got that entry. So Zotero is just a place to store anything you want to be able to cite from quickly and repeatedly. So that's how you get something from Logos over into Zotero is just, you have to make sure you click RIS style, copy, and then you import from clipboard on the Zotero side, and that'll keep it there for you forever. You can add notes in Zotero if you want to. If you prefer Logos, that's totally fine as well. Other resources outside of Logos, you could put the PDF to it there, like a web article or something like that, and you can just start building your Zotero collection. But we'll give some time for Zotero in a minute. Are there any questions about Logos and the changes to Logos Max, even account information or things like that? Do you have any questions about using the software?
Yeah, I just put one in the chat. I can't for the life of me figure out the reading tabs, like the start and stop tabs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I've read way past what I needed to several times.
Okay.
And I have looked everywhere. I can't find those things.
Yeah. So here's some important information about reading tabs. And part of this is work to be done on our side. But in the first course, there was a fairly heavy emphasis pointing you to use the links that are inside of Logos itself. So let me share my screen again, and I'll show you what this looks like. I see some mentor professors have joined us, so we'll have you guys speak about the mentoring process in just a moment here. So I hope you can see my Logos screen now. I'm going to open the LD 102 courseware textbook. And here's an example of a segment. Let's go to the one above here. So this is segment 37. This is the course that Logos designed, and Dr. Schwant was at the helm of Logos Mobile Ed for many years. And so they created these courses with these explore activities after the video. So if you click something in here, these all have locks on them. So let me actually go back to one of the first, let me go back to, let's see, levels of leadership. At the beginning of the course, a lot of these links are unlocked. So these are resources that are included in your custom library. So here's an example, studies in leadership. If you click this link from the mobile ed course, then those start and stop markers will usually show up for you. So let's try it. And that is the case. And the reason it shows up is because I clicked the link from the mobile ed course. The reason why I wouldn't recommend you try to make this happen every time is because our courses are built in a way that does not match one-to-one with the original mobile ed course design. Our courses are 3-credit seminary courses. They're not just individual mobile ed courses. And so the way you'll figure out where to stop, the most reliable method is not looking for these, which will never appear if you just click the Moodle links. They won't show up at all if you just start from Moodle and click the link to the reading. It has to be clicking the link from the Explore section. So sometimes that works because it does correspond to what the reading is, but really you need to just look and see where it says to stop. So required reading, here's an example of a required reading. It will usually tell you, well, this one doesn't. So this is SF 511. When we move these into Populi, we will say where the stopping point is. So I can see why that's really confusing, Jeremy, because if you were to skip this step and then just click this link, you won't actually see the stopping point. You would have to click it from the Explore section to get that to work. So this one specifically tells you to do that. There aren't too many of these left, I think. So we're trying to weed them out and always, we're trying to always have any instructions stop when you get to this point. So I will be trying to pick out the rest of these that remain because it's important to have in the instructions what the stopping point of the reading actually is. I mean, you can figure it out sometimes by just saying, okay, what's underneath this heading? We know here's the resource, here's the book you're reading in, but what chapter is it or what section? It should tell you that in the title of the reading. But in this case, yeah, you don't have a clear some clear instructions about where to stop. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, most are pretty good. I think there was only the odd one where there wasn't really any kind of break between what that particular topic was, and it just launched into the rest of it. So I only ran into it a couple times that it was a thing, but I did notice it. So
yeah, and that can happen. Like this stop reading that comes from the mobile ed, it might be in the middle of an unbroken, no new heading, anything like that. Occasionally they'll stop short of the end of an actual entry in a dictionary or something like that. So that's good to be aware of. Thank you for bringing that up. I need to do some more work on clarifying those stopping points, especially in SF 511. I think we got away from it more in the later courses, but SF 511 was really emphasizing to use those so that the markers did show up. Problem is they're not always reliable, and you can't have a consistent method to always do it that way in a way that will actually get you these results. Very good question. All right, well, let me take a break right now because our mentor professors have joined us. And one of the things we want to do during this time, we'll get back to some of the other particulars later, but these gentlemen are here to share with you a little bit about what it's like to engage in these mentoring sessions. All of them have mentored several students. I think Dr. Bruce Clark, who's here now, he's one of our most recent, but this will give you a chance to meet different professors who are available to serve as your mentors for courses. And it also might relieve a little bit of the questions you might have if you haven't done a lot of mentoring sessions yet, just what to expect. And I've also asked these gentlemen to share something, if they can think of something that comes to mind that would be helpful for you to know, that, after working with students, they've noticed this really tends to help and this works well. Then I've asked them to share any insights they have along those lines as well. So Dr. Raymond, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll turn it over to you first.
Okay, well, I think I've been doing this for about 3 years now, somewhere around there. For me, the sessions start off in prayer, and we go through the process of looking at the material for the unit. If there's any questions, or if I have any questions, or kind of dive deeper into some of the topics that the student might be more interested in. I think for me, I always have in the back of my mind RS 752, the last class in the project. How are we going to apply this material to that last class? If they have any ideas, that they might be heading in that direction. Because some people come into this as like, I don't have a ministry. I'm not a pastor. I'm not whatever. But then they soon realize that they do have ministry, and they are doing the work of building the kingdom. It just doesn't follow the standard model. So I think the process of going through the courses, whatever the course is, for me is that framework of how are you going to apply this, as well as learning what's going on with the unit. And I find most students, they embrace it, and it's really neat to see it happen.
Great. Is there anything as far as having a good mentor session, a good enriching conversation? What are some of the things that you've noticed that tend to make that go well?
Be prepared, do the work, get into the material, know it. Yeah, but I don't see there very many students don't do that, because everybody's interested in diving into this material. To make a good mentor session is to know the material, know what fires you up about it, find out your interest, and bring that to the table, and let's talk about it. And just be aware that maybe there's something that you missed, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more. But I think just having that heart for learning, for growing, for knowing what God's got planned in your life, and just with that open heart to explore deeper and to be prepared. I mean, that's a major thing.
Yep. Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Soderberg, how about you?
Yeah, great to see you all here. I wrote out some notes so I wouldn't forget. But yeah, I guess I've been doing this for at least 2 years, maybe 3. Long enough to not remember exactly. But yeah, so in the first class, the SF class, spiritual formations, it's a bit different than later ones. So some of this will apply to the later classes. But at the end of each unit, we have the unit learning objectives. And so those are the things that we're supposed to talk about. And so I do like to stick to those in the earlier classes, but as you get more used to the program and how things work, as you get more comfortable with talking about what you have learned, then we can branch out into other areas. And so with students that I've had for a while, or students who are down the road in the program, we kind of have just a free range a discussion about whatever they're interested in. But it's good to just focus on those the specific unit learning objectives earlier on in the program. But yeah, just some tips, I think, for my own journey as a student, lifelong teacher and student. Just enjoy the journey. You're not going to learn everything. Even though you'll have a master's degree, you're not going to be a master. So this is a lifelong process. So I always say we're just going to fly over the forest, and you can go back later and spend some time in various campgrounds that you saw along the way, or go back and look at that tree that you wanted to look at. But yeah, keep track of your notes, what you want to go back and look at later, because a great way to learn is by taking notes. So we force you to do that. So yeah, invest in your notes, because you can use those later in sermons, lessons for Sunday school, and also for writing, as you teach your people, or as you might want to write later on. I've encouraged some students to maybe start a Substack or something where they can post what they're doing for class, because a lot of the work you do can easily transfer into other types of writing and also publishing. Yeah, so also don't be afraid to be curious. Don't just settle for a textbook answer. Don't think, okay, what's the right answer here? Is this going to be on the test? There are no tests. So, but in that sense, what really what shows us that you're learning is that you're bringing questions, right? So don't worry about getting the right answer. I mean, so often we'll just say, well, this is the best we can do with this, but only God knows the answer to this, right? So we're doing theology, so we're not going to get it all figured out. Yeah, and don't worry about impressing us. We're already impressed that you're in the program. I'm sure most of you already have other jobs, family. I've done that. Did grad school on the side of teaching full time with 5 kids, so I know how it goes. So we're impressed. So just know that we are here to help you and to assist you and to learn from you. Honestly, I really enjoyed learning from folks who are older than me and have more life experience. And you all have different gifts and abilities. So we're all in this together. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Olson, what would you like to add?
Hello, everybody. I live in Colorado, and the Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's nice outside today. Just got back from a walk with my wife. I see mentoring as 3 phases, is kind of how I do it. The first phase is the preparation, and I spend about 45 minutes to an hour for each student going through y'all's notes that you've done, highlighting them and commenting on them before we ever meet. And so that when we meet, I already have a really good idea of what each student has done and where we can focus on the discussion on when we do meet. The second part is the actual meeting. And when we meet, divide the time into three parts. The first 10 minutes we always talk about what is Jesus doing in your life in the last week, and I will share that too. So they share and I share, and if I'm one of y'all's mentors at one point, then it's part of the mutual relationship we have, sharing and seeing and talking about what Jesus is doing in and through us. And then we spend about 30 minutes after that talking through the learning objectives and branching off of that. Some maybe from comments I've made or interactions we've had. And then there's a time at the end of that 30 minutes for just Q&A. So any student that says, I say, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask that maybe don't 100% fit into the learning objectives, but we can talk about it. And sometimes students do, and sometimes it's really quiet. So, and either is fine. And then the last 10 minutes is devoted to prayer. So we both share prayer requests with each other, and then we spend time praying for each other. So that's the second phase of a weekly time. The third phase is after the time is over. During the week, I'll text each student and ask them how they're doing and what God's doing in their lives and how they're applying what they learned. And they can also text me like, okay, this happened, and can you pray for this and stuff. And so that's kind of how I see it. That's kind of how I have been doing it. I've been a part of Redemption since it started, but more the last 2.5 years, roughly. So, and I love it. And I will add this: for us as mentors, this is like a privilege. We get to do this with you. We get to be a part of what God is doing in your journey. And sometimes, for some students that we get to engage with, that means a lifetime of relationship. Although I've only been doing it for a few years. So like I had my first 2 students last term that graduated. And so and one of them is now meeting with me every week for breakfast. He meets with me and another local pastor for accountability because he lives in my city. And so I hear after he's done what God has been doing in his life on an ongoing basis. That doesn't happen with every student, of course, because not many live here in Colorado Springs, but there are relationships that do continue beyond the bounds of this of school. But one tip I would have is be thinking about the convergence of all your studies, your life, and ministry and how it works together for that project at the end. Because the goal is that that project would be extremely useful for your ministry context, whatever that context is, you know. So, and it's probably going to change as you go through the program, but the heart behind it is this would be super impactful for you and the ministry that you're involved with. That's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olson. And you certainly put the mentor in mentor professor. I'll say that. I've noticed that with a lot of our professors, you know, they go above and beyond because they do genuinely care. Sometimes that can result in expectations from one professor to another. It can be a little bit of a bumpy transition sometimes when you choose different people for different courses. So we have a variety. You know, we have some students that like to request the same mentor professor course after course, and that is fine. We have others who prefer to switch it up every single time to benefit from as many as they like. And so there is variety in how different professors approach it, how they do it. I can tell you that our minimums, which Dr. Olson is one who exceeds this on a regular basis, but we expect about 45 minutes to be the minimum time it takes for each session. So that the way we describe it to professors is at least 10 minutes before the session starts, you're going over the student's work. You know, you're reading through the material that they've written. You're looking for things you might comment in their Google Doc about something you want to talk about during the session in particular, or commend them for, or ask a question about. But a minimum of 10, and then the 30-minute session together. And then during that time, you definitely need to use the unit learning objectives as a structure for both what you share, highlights of your learning, and what the professor is grading you on. And so just real quick, this is what it looks like on the professor's side. This is a rubric, and you can see all this in Populi when you're signed up for your mentoring version of your courses. This lays out with that assignment for each week what the ULOs are, what the unit learning objectives are. And so the professors, their main academic job is to determine, did you demonstrate this in your portfolio and in our meeting? And so it tells you exactly what those topics are as far as the goals for what you were learning in that unit. So this is what they do. Their job is to determine, did they demonstrate this between the portfolio and the actual live meeting time? They can make comments on each of these here, and then that's essentially what they do for each week, plus the final wrap up types of feedback at the end of the course. So you can always know ahead of time, this will be in your portfolios, usually in your learning management system as well. But that's the structure for the conversation, and so that's the result of what happens at the end, academically speaking. So with that said, you know, there's a lot of variety in exactly how it goes. We do not want it to be only an oral examination. It shouldn't feel like, you know, you're defending a dissertation as you do each of these mentor sessions. It's a conversation. It's mentoring, not just examination. But it's also not a completely free flowing, you know, let's talk about the baseball game we watched this week and things like that, and that type of thing. It's got a structure, it's got a goal, which is to talk about those unit learning objectives and your competency that's been demonstrated in the portfolio, and as you talk through it as well. So Dr. Clark, you've been mentoring now the Greek course, which is a brand new phase that we've entered into with original languages. And you've also done some other courses as well with students. So what's your experience been like, and what advice would you give to our incoming students?
Yeah, hey everybody. No, I would think what has been said so far is I don't know if I have too much more to add. I mean, I think for me, a great mentor session involves two things. The first is prayer, that we want to have our conversation in the presence of God. That's huge. So we start out with prayer, and the second would be just great preparation. So prayer and preparation are huge. And by preparation, I mean three things. One, the student can offer a few really solid comments on the course content, on the unit material. So one is good comments from the student. The second would be good questions. That was already mentioned by another mentor. But just asking good questions that arise from your engagement. So preparation looks like good comments, good questions, and the third would be good contextualization. In other words, you've taken the course content and you've sought to contextualize it to your situation, your life story, to your ministry, or whatever situation you have, so that you're seeking to not just receive, but to actually use the content to equip you for ministry. So that's basically how I think about it. I mean, and I think in general, as a mentor, I see myself less as, for me, that the conversation is less about evaluation. It's probably more about assistance. I'm here to, I mean, you said this is your master's degree. It's your, you're here to learn and grow and be equipped, and I'm here to help you with that. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I love talking with all the various students and hearing their stories. And yeah, the Greek, I'm in my second term teaching Greek, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, John's done a great job with the course, and it's amazing to see how far. I think the students regularly surprise themselves by how far they can come in 7 weeks. So it's often intimidating for them, but it's incredibly rewarding, especially in that last unit when they tackle the first 5 verses of John, and we do it together, and they're just blown away that they can actually translate it. So, which is an amazing thing, when 7 weeks ago they probably couldn't even recognize a letter of the Greek alphabet. So yeah, I think that's probably it, Joel.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. If you need to go, we totally understand. Thank you for taking this time to share. And we'll dive back in now to some of the portfolio stuff. And one of the things I wanted to share is that the professors, as far as your written work, they're looking at your portfolio. You share that in Google Documents. You can interact. You can make a comment and tag them in it. They can do the same for you. And so that's an interactive document. That's why we have it in Google Docs, because you're both tracking with each other in real time. So typically it's going to be, you're in the Zoom session together. You're talking on the one screen, but then on another window or another screen, you're both in the shared Google document. So you don't have to do screen sharing to share that. You can actually track with each other in that document. And it makes it really handy to have both. You have the portfolio work and the live conversation on Zoom. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the topic of notes. I'm going to show you what the portfolio document looks like, and make a couple of comments on that for the sake of your workflow. One of the issues that comes up quite often, because we have options with this, is what do I do with my notes? There's instructions about how to use Zotero for notes. Logos has a lot of options for how to do notes as well. So while it's true that it really is up to you as far as how you do that, I also want to say that it's not a bad idea to just take your notes in your portfolio. It doesn't bother professors if you have more information than necessary right here. You could have lesson 2, you could have it at the end of lesson 2, just a note section right there where you're jotting down your notes, some key quotes. You don't need to go overboard with how much content you put in for a note. It can be very brief, but you could consider simplifying the workflow a little bit by taking your notes about the course where everything's just in the portfolio. In fact, at the end of each unit, there's an entire section here that's dedicated for those optional notes. So you could just use this optional note section to jot down a quote, a clipping, just copy and paste straight out of Logos and line it up right here, over and above the responses you might make to the specific questions that your mentor professor is going to be reading over from you. So that's an option that you might find convenient, rather than maintaining Zotero notes, that in the future you might see yourself, well, on the topic of spiritual formation, I'm going to go back to my course portfolio for that course and see what I learned about that topic there, as kind of the place. Because one of the things that does is it means fewer windows open, fewer places to go and search for things. Anytime you're in your portfolio, you can just hit Command F or Control F and find a key term, just by searching the document. And just like in Logos, you'll just scroll through and see where you mentioned that, and that would pick up on your notes that easily as well. So there are advantages to taking notes in Logos, and in Zotero you can do tagging to organize around topics and things like that. But if you'd like a simpler approach, you could also use your portfolio for that. As I mentioned, you can tag your professor in a comment. You just highlight something. This little button comes up here. You hit the @ symbol to tag any person who that's shared with. And so those kinds of things with the interactive document. It has tools that allow that kind of interaction and collaboration. And that's one way to simplify your workflow, is just to use it for notes as well. So what we're looking at here is your course portfolio. Again, one of my major tips is just, if you're working on a lesson, before you do the readings and videos in Moodle, make sure you just check what you're going to be asked to respond to in your portfolio. This is your output. There's not anywhere else where you have to write based on what you're about to watch and read in Logos. So this is the spot, and having these in mind ahead of time helps organize your thinking for at least the minimum of what you're listening for. There's going to be lots of other things, like Dr. Soderbergh emphasized, that you're doing a survey of what this landscape looks like. Later on, you're going to want to come back and study that tree or that particular location, perhaps, so you can note those things to return to later. But the minimum is to be able to formulate responses to these specific questions. Having them in mind ahead of time can really help. So that's the portfolio. Any questions about this piece of the workflow? We've got just a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure I give time for any questions that you all have, and we can dive into those particular issues. Anyone in the chat? I don't see any new messages in the chat. Is anybody else thinking of a topic that we didn't touch on that you're wondering about, or that you've already had some trouble with? There are how-to videos on Zotero posted. They're linked in the orientation guide. So here, for example, this is your orientation checklist. There's all these different sections with orientation information. But here in the Zotero info, you can see this is a fairly recent video on using Zotero 7 with Logos and Google Docs, just getting that whole connection working. You can check out this video that's linked right here. It's on YouTube. You can slow it down. You can pause it. You can replay certain sections if it moves too quick, but it's about a 7-minute video. It's probably worth your time if you want to use Zotero. With that, I mean, there are ways to not use Zotero and still cite your sources accurately. You can use parenthetical notes. You can use Logos, but all in all, it's going to save you time in the long run across the program to get Zotero working for you. That's why we still recommend it. Feel free to jump in if you have questions. I see a couple in the chat here. Suggested beverages for mentor sessions. That is totally up to you. Yeah, it just depends. Energy drinks are going to give you a lot more speed in your conversations. No, I don't recommend that. I have no recommendations for beverages, but perhaps you all have your own beverage of choice, because usually somebody's in a session sipping on something that they like to match with those mentor sessions. So let's see. The other topic was, what about doing your studies on a mobile device? We have some people who say I do everything on an iPad. I don't even really use a desktop or laptop. It is possible to do a lot with mobile. And here's how you would do it. There's the Moodle app for mobile and the Populi app for mobile. I've done some testing with the course instructions in Populi. So for example, I'm logged in as a student right here. This is the brand new NT 501 course that is built in Populi. And there's a Populi app where you can actually just pull this up on your phone or iPad, and you can click these links and it will launch you to those readings in Logos, also on the Logos mobile app on that same device. There's going to be some research steps that the features for that do not exist in the mobile app of Logos. So long term, we're going to be marking those out as this requires the desktop app. We do recommend the desktop app for Logos, but there's a way to make a lot of progress by having the Moodle or Populi app for your instructions, linking that into Logos, and then even putting the Google Docs app on your phone. You can dictate into Google Docs in your portfolio, for example. You can even add a footnote and then pull from the Zotero app on your phone and copy and paste that in. It's not going to be linked in the same way as the desktop versions of everything, but it is possible to make a lot of progress if you're mobile only, or if you're on the go for a while. Another thing we're doing is we're going to take everything from the online LMS, and we're going to have it like we do for the Greek course already. It's going to be offline in a Google document that you can use without any internet connection. So if you download everything on Logos to your desktop, and you have this offline Google document with all the instructions that would be in Moodle or Populi for what to do in the course, and then you have your portfolio also in an offline version, you could actually have no internet at all and still enjoy your schoolwork and be able to do everything. So we're going to strengthen that area a little bit to make it mobile friendly or offline friendly. So that's going to be a direction we're taking in the future. We also have a question here on Obsidian. Obsidian is another note-taking software tool, and we have had several students that have used Obsidian. So if you're already on that and you wanted to use it as your note-taking spot, then that would be totally fine. We've had several students prefer that over Zotero or Logos or the portfolio for notes. I've also heard, well, I've recently dumped Evernote because of their free version. It basically includes nothing now, at last I checked. So I got everything out of Evernote onto just Apple Notes, and Apple Notes has tagging to link the notes on topics together. So I just use the built-in Apple Notes for all my notes on just about anything because it's on every device, automatically synced. So that would be an option as well. Just have a Apple Notes document that you could have for your courses as well. So yes, whatever works best for you, but just make sure the biggest advantage is not, you don't want to split your notes on topics up across multiple locations, where if you're studying something for a Bible study you're teaching or something you're trying to write, you have to go and track it down in 5 different places to see what you've learned about this topic and remind yourself, have one place that's organized where the majority of your notes are going, so you can easily browse through that later on and remember the things that you had to work with on that topic. Great question. All right. Any final questions before we wrap up? I don't want to take too much more of your time. We can always schedule a personal one-on-one meeting. You can book it on my calendar and we can follow up individually if you want to dig into particular topics more deeply. I do that all the time and be glad to meet with you if needed. That'd be helpful. Anything else that you can think of that would benefit the group before we wrap up today? Or a question? We have a couple of our mentor professors are still on. If you have a question for them, you could ask that as well. All right, going once, going twice. Thank you all for joining today. I hope it had some value for you. And like I said, please follow up with me by email. We can set up another appointment if you'd like to dig in further. And may the Lord bless you in your studies. And as our professors reminded us, it's really about enjoying the presence of God, growing to be more like Christ, and enjoying that journey, the privilege that it is that we get to study and do this together. So thank you all for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, this has been great. Thank you.
Good night.